Today on The Social.
Not talking about this.
Going off the record. Legendary football coach Bill Belichick's latest interview is making headlines after his girlfriend shut down a question about their relationship. And surveilling our seniors. People are using GPS monitors to track their aging parents' whereabouts. But some believe this raises issues of consent. Then, isn't it finally time for male birth control? We talked to the filmmakers behind a new documentary about a group of scientists fighting to make medical history. Plus, from TV producer to author, Sue Hinsenberg stops by to talk about her debut novel, a book about murder, mayhem, and friendship. It all starts now on The Social.
Audience. Thank you so much. Have a seat, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to The Social. Well, we do know it is Election Day across the nation today. But the other top story that is top of mind for so many people today is, of course, this weekend's SUV attack on a Filipino festival in Vancouver. Now, what was supposed to be a festival celebrating culture and inclusion has left a community shattered. So far, 11 people have been killed, with more than 20 others injured, and a 30-year-old Vancouver man. He's actually been charged with, so far, 8 counts of second-degree murder. We do have more charges expected to happen very, very soon.
Mel, we know you're a part of the Filipino-Canadian community, and you even have family out in Vancouver?
I do. I have an aunt and an uncle, so of course the family chat lit up right away to find out who was there, who had attended. Luckily, they decided not to go to the festival, which was a huge sigh of relief for us. But, you know, Vancouver is home to the second largest Filipino community outside of Toronto. There's at least 140,000 strong. There were 100,000 people in attendance at that festival. Jeez. So you can imagine that the majority of the community was actually there. And that is the part that's frightening to me.
And how is the community doing? Like,
you know, anybody who knows a Filipino person, there's two things that represent us: family and faith. And that is being tested very heavily right now, but that is the very thing that I think is going to get the community there through this. The Lapu-Lapu Festival, it's a relatively new festival, but the guy that they celebrate, it is definitely a joyful festival, but it is also a festival that represents resistance against those who would do you harm. And so it is an interesting thing that the community is being tested now to resist against the hate, the hurt, and quite frankly, the terror that has descended upon the community. So I just want to say, you know, Filipinos live love. It is what we are known for. We are with you. Canada is with you. So it's going to be a very, very hard time, but I just have to say mabuhay. So keep going.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Keep going.
Thank you for that. Mel. Very well said. All right, so our next story, the Alzheimer's Society of Canada estimates that more than 771,000 people live with dementia, and that number is expected to reach nearly 1 million by 2030. So CTV News is reporting that some families are resorting to putting GPS trackers on elderly parents, sometimes with some without consent. All right, so should we be talking about consent with aging parents? Yeah? Audience, you guys are all kind of on the same page?
Everyone's on the same page. That's a really interesting question. Listen, right now, according to the Alzheimer's Society, over 770,000 Canadians are living with dementia, and that number is expected to hit 1 million by the year 2030. That's only 5 years away. I think we absolutely should be having this discussion with our aging parents right now.
Yeah. Well, what if we're not able to have that discussion? What if our parent is already in the early stages of dementia? We can't have the discussion.
So you'd be the caregiver.
Would we be going against against their wishes? What do you...
I know, but I think it's a different situation. Listen, I did this, and I tell everybody that I meet, you should do this. Because, don't get me wrong, I respect someone's privacy, but when your parents reach that stage of life, you need to accept that they are not the parent that you grew up with. They're in a different stage, and you need to look out for them. You need to be 5 steps ahead of wherever they're doing. So my dad had vascular dementia, which meant that his short-term memory wasn't great, but his long-term was great. He knew his name, his address. My dad would also love to go for walks. He would go for 2 to 3 walks a day. I think we have footage of me just recording my dad. That's my dad going on one of his walks.
I love this.
And I love that he wanted to get outside and get exercise. But there was one day I was watching the news, and there was a guy whose father did not come home. And it was so eerily close to my situation. His dad was in his 70s, loved to go on walks. Everybody in the neighborhood knew him. That was exactly like my dad. And then one day, the father did not come home. And he was on the news explaining to people the last thing he saw his father wearing, where his dad usually walks, and was just asking the public, if you see my father, say something. Days and days went on, and they couldn't find his father. And that made me go to the store immediately and get a GPS tracker and put it in my dad's walker, because I'm like, and I didn't tell him, because I didn't want my dad to feel like I was treating him like a child, but I needed that peace of mind that I was never gonna get that phone call of like, we haven't seen your father and it's 10 p.m., where is he? I don't know, I never wanted an answer. So I tracked my dad, and I would pop up on him all the time, and he'd be like, I was just thinking about you, and then you appear, and I'd go, funny how that happened. How that happened? But it was peace of mind, not just for me, it was peace of mind for everybody, and then my dad got to keep his freedom of going for his walks. So I tell everybody, low jack your parents.
Listen,
Low jack them.
I totally understand, and I think we're all on the same page here, especially from the perspective of potential caregivers and children of these of elderly parents. But when I think about it from my perspective of myself and getting older and imagining Jaya putting trackers on me, I'm going to be honest, it makes me feel uncomfortable, because I think to myself, obviously, if I'm in full-blown dementia, I won't know. But if it's in the months or years leading up to that, what if I'm living my best life, and what if I'm having an affair? And I'm just saying.
Stay out of my business, right?
I'm just saying, I don't know when that tipping point happens. Well, maybe okay, let's go with like a more wholesome scenario. Let's say I'm planning a really important surprise party for my grandchild, and I don't want people to know about that. Like, I think it's like the question is, when do we decide that it's appropriate to track our parents? Because they are, for all intents and purposes, they're adults, right? Before they get to that stage, should you have those conversations like, hey, do I get your consent to this? Because most parents, I think, would say yes if I'm
I agree
risk,
with that. That sounds really lovely. The problem with dementia, it does not give you a heads up to say, you know what, tomorrow, Mom's not coming home. She's not going to remember her way home. That's the problem.
Right.
Having the discussion is great, but you don't know that day they're not going to come home, and you don't want to wait for that day. So be preemptive. If you want to have your affair, that's fine. I don't have to tell anybody about it, but I just need to know where you're at. I just need to know where you're at. I just need to know where you're at.
I'm going home tomorrow, and I will ask my mother for permission, but I want to grab her phone, which she wears around her neck, and which actually she had the foresight to. She had a stroke a couple of months ago. She's doing really well.
Good.
But she had the wherewithal. She couldn't dial 911, so she used the voice activation. I was like, oh, this is technology at its finest.
Yeah.
This was incredible. But I do want to be able to track her location now, thanks to you. So I am going to do that.
You're going to ask her. You're going to ask her?
She won't know what I'm doing anyway.
Okay, you're just going to do it.
Yeah.
I think you know what? We just had a segment on the show recently. It was about advanced care planning. And I don't know about you, but my parents have always said the same thing. We do not want to be a burden to you, our adult children. And I think most of us, when we get to that stage, we want to be able to say the same thing. So I think what a beautiful conversation to say, and I said this during the segment, while your parents, if they've got their wits about them, and some are don't, but if they do, what a way to be able to open up a conversation and just say, hey, listen, what do you want the sunset years of your life to look like, and how can I help? And it could be, what do you want the last 5 or 10 or even 15 years to look like? And maybe, an air tag is in the document, an air tag is part of the conversation, because I do think, like my mother, I got her an Apple Watch just so I can track her heart rate. She's got high blood pressure. And And it has fall detection. Like, technology is a beautiful thing, and she fully consents to it because she's alone so often during the day.
Okay, if she didn't consent to it, would you still give her the watch?
Well, here's the thing. She's got her head about, my mother is so sharp, and she's like, track me, I track everything.
Okay.
But have that discussion before
I have to say, my mom has a pacemaker, and she has an app that tracks it. And I don't know if I would want that information because of the fluctuation. That might turn me into every 5 minutes just being like, oh my God, what's going on? She would be like, Jessie, I just had a very active bowel movement, you know? Nothing to worry about. So it's tricky, right?
Do it, because you know what? If your mom can't talk and something does happen, you'll have the information with the paramedic or the doctor to say, this is what was happening to my mother because I have all of the information on my tech. Trust me. Jack your parents. Trust me. Low jack them.
All right, everybody, when we get back, legendary football coach Bill Belichick's latest interview is going viral after his very young girlfriend, his 48-year younger girlfriend, she was seen shutting down a question or more about their relationship. So was including the footage by the network actually out of bounds? So we're going to show you the tape. You decide after this. We'll be back.
Tomorrow on The Social, cottage season is almost here, and we're getting simple, stress-free recipes so you can spend less time in the kitchen and more time by the lake. This week on The Social, drag superstar Priyanka joins us to chat about reviving restaurants in her new Crave series, Drag Brunch Saved My Life.
If you want to be a part of this conversation, join us on social media.
So former NFL coach Bill Belichick sat down with CBS's Mornings to talk about his new book, The Art of Winning. And at one point, he was asked how he met his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. Take a look.
You have Jordan right over there. Everybody in the world seems to be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
Okay, so apparently Jordan interrupted the interview multiple times. That wasn't the only time. So was CBS in the right to film her and include those moments within their interview? Why not?
Why not? I say, heck yes, they were in the right. Heck yes. This is the one thing that Jordan Hudson maybe doesn't know yet about life in public life. You know, you get to control the image and the message and the story that you tell on your Instagram, Jordan. You do not get to control journalists. And so that is why journalism exists, because that's fair game. And, you know, I don't want, let me be careful. I don't want that to come off as I'm attacking her, because what we don't know is who is actually in control of this. She looks like more of a manager than a girlfriend at that moment.
Yeah.
We don't know how much of that conversation beforehand was Bill saying, you make sure you step in if you hear something that you know I'm not going to like. So I'm not going to automatically blame her, but I do think it was in the right that the journalist showed.
I would go even further. I think it was within their right. I think they almost had no choice but to, because these are news producers, these are news journalists. She inserted herself into the story, you know, so they would be doing a disservice to their craft if they didn't. If she had interrupted maybe once, they might have been like, oh, okay, she's just being protective. But she became the story by interrupting multiple times. They were doing their job, I'd argue.
Yeah. I watched that. I watched that story yesterday morning. Tony DeColpo, thank you very much, my friend. Great journalism and the team. Because instead of us thinking about Bill and his wonderful career as the NFL coach with the most rings, we are all walking away and talking about the fact that his very young girlfriend was controlling the situation. You know what they say? He may be the head, but she's the neck. Because he wasn't making a move without her say so, and she kept on interrupting. So he had, like, I felt like Tony had no choice but to do that. And this is a little inside baseball. In our industry, it's not uncommon for someone to be off to the side interjecting, but usually it's because the person being interviewed has a court case coming up. So their lawyer's like, please don't answer that question. You can't answer that question. Or you have a celebrity who's in a disaster and their publicist is to the side going, we can't answer that question. That's going to lead, you know, it's going to turn into. But her sitting there where it's like, a very simple question. How'd you meet? And she was so defensive. I was like, girl, you just gave us a window. And now what I'm thinking is, Bill has 3 adult children from a previous marriage. I need to hear from them. Yeah. Because what is this relationship?
Well, you know what I'll say.
Right? What is this relationship?
All I could think about is the fact that she probably has a tracker on him. Oh my God.
Most definitely.
She might.
I doubt he consented to it, but anyway.
You know what just occurred to me watching that too? All of that controlling of the narrative, but she couldn't control getting him a T-shirt without holes in it.
Oh, no.
Did you notice that?
Oh, sorry. Ribbed. I think that was the style.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's cool.
But here's
it's an
the thing.
old sweatshop, a sweat top that he's always wearing.
I want to just jump on what you said. I just want to jump on what you said, Andrea, because it's like it does now make us start to question the dynamics and the power structure of that relationship naturally. But if you take a look, or you know the history of Bill Belichick, he's a notoriously introverted, quiet guy. He's had relationships and marriages. He's the guy who's the say nothing guy. They ask him questions in an interview. He talks a little bit, but he says nothing.
Oh, I see.
And this is actually his history. So now, all of a sudden, he has a girlfriend who puts up pictures all over Instagram, and she's inviting us in. This is the stuff she posts.
She's a mermaid?
She's a mermaid.
And he's a fisherman catching her.
So you know she probably bought that outfit, that costume for him, and was like, look, I'm such a great catch. Honey, why don't you dress up like a fisherman? I'll dress up like a mermaid. I'll be honest, she is inviting us in. He only got an Instagram account after the two of them started dating. I wonder why. So it does make me ask questions. I don't want to be ageist and say he's got no agency, but I do want to ask him the question, without her in the room, are you okay?
Yes. See, and I don't think of him. He is quiet, but he's also notorious for running a very tight ship with his athletes and bringing other NFL players to tears. So I'm looking at him the whole time. I was like, who is this man? This is not the guy. If you were a true football fan, you're like, what happened to this guy? This is a tough, no nonsense, and that's everybody knows him for that. So I was looking at it like, oh man, somebody needs to look into this. Elder abuse, I'm not saying, but it was like, it felt uncomfortable to watch, and that is why CBS put it out that way. I'm just saying, more to come.
Okay, well, according to TMZ, Belichick and Hudson met on a flight, and actually the New York Times is reporting that the airport lounge has become the prime place to find tons of romance. People are getting dressed up or getting to the airport early to spend time there. So is the airport lounge an ideal place to find love?
Right? It sounds nice, right? I told you, listen, it sounds nice, and I've heard this story several times. I actually even have a girlfriend, Jenna Treat. She met her husband. They've been together for 15 years. She met him in the lounge. Wow. But as an avid traveler, I feel like I'm going to the wrong airport because I'm looking at like baggage handlers, TSA officers, even the guy who's waving you in, and I'm not seeing these guys. So I'm like, maybe I need to go to a different airport. Maybe Toronto Pearson International is not working for me because I don't know about you guys. You guys see hot people in the airport? I'm just not seeing them.
You know where they
I'm
are.
never looking.
Go ahead.
Good answer.
You are?
No, I'm never looking.
Good answer.
But now that you mention it. Hey, listen, because in the comments on this, someone suggested that they actually have a singles lounge at the airport lounge.
Not a bad idea.
Like, would you tip your toes into that water?
Gosh. Here's the deal. Would I go just to see? Yes. But my gut instinct, because I'm a pessimist, I'm like, I'm just imagining very young girls and old men and just a seedy nightclub vibe. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Here's why I don't like this idea, and maybe this is what you're picking up on, is that there's a lot of anxiety. We've talked about this before you travel. I'm always being like, was my gate gonna change? Am I feeling a little bit anxious? I don't want to miss anything. I'm certainly not in a situation to get wrapped up or lost in a conversation, which is what you want when you meet someone. And not only that, the lighting in an airport.
You're right.
Awful.
I'm gonna say no.
If you find
found love in that lighting.
That's
then
what I'm saying.
only up from there.
Yeah.
It's true love. We'll see. I think it might be thrilling for generations younger than we are because they actually have the potential of meeting someone in real life, which sounds old-fashioned. Yeah. But, you know, that's how we met people. And for them, it's like, oh, my goodness, I can just meet someone like the old people used to in the olden days.
Maybe that's the
Someone
truth.
starting that app, it's like, you know, I don't know, like Wings of Love, like something is going to happen. Oh, you know what? Stamped at No Races, we're taking that.
Yeah.
Don't take that idea. Okay?
That's a good idea.
Well, let's take another break, everybody. And some U.S. colleges, they are now turning their student athletes into social media stars. So we're going to dive into the pros and the cons of this practice when we come back. We'll be back. Story. The New York Times is reporting on a growing number of U.S. colleges that are now turning their student athletes into social media stars. So at the University of North Carolina, for example, at Chapel Hill, the athletic department encourages students to work with companies that will help them reach fame and hence money. So the question is, should schools be in this business of helping their athletes score these big brand deals? What do we think?
Why does this make me feel so funny then? I think I would like this story more if it were for professional athletes. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's their job. That would be a big help for them, especially for female athletes who we know get paid quite a bit less. But for student athletes, I don't know, there's part of me that just wants them to be able to just student. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just work on school, play their sport, but this seems like another job and a great deal of stress on what should be, I think, that very specific time in life where you don't have to, you have the rest of your life to do that.
I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish towards you,
no,
but
I love.
that horse left the barn a long time ago, especially in the States. Student athletes, that is a full-blown business. That's been happening for decades. If you look at what happens in the NCAA.
Student musicians and student artists, though, are they doing that as well?
I don't know that they're leveraging their monetary.
It's not the same. It's not the same following. Yeah. It's not the same. It's not the same access.
Because I also think there is an age generational thing here. I think the idea of online life, that's a non-negotiable for any young person in 2025.
For sure.
I think that, and you don't have to be an athlete. You can just be someone in your basement doing YouTube.
But if you're interested in that, I'm just
because you're on the show too, not just me. Sometimes I get excited. Sorry. Continue.
But like, if you're interested in that and you're an athlete, shouldn't you just go and get an agent or a manager to manage that? Like, why is the school getting involved?
That's what I was. That's it.
I hear what you're saying, but if you know the history of the NCAA, who was taking advantage of student athletes for decades, and literally, you could, if you stayed in a friend of the family's house, you could lose your whole scholarship over that. The rules were so ridiculous. So the fact that they're actually just accepting and allowing student athletes to make money now, it's a much better situation. And I think it actually has a pro, because let's be real, all of these kids are hearing that their peers are making millions of dollars, right? But think about it. You have to go to school, you have to focus on your sport, and now you also have contracts to go over for these opportunities, brand opportunities. It's perfect to have a person who's a liaison for the school, because the school has to look out, because the school's still like, yo, you belong to us. You're not here, you're here for free, but you are paying for it by being on these teams. So we do need to have someone who has our vested interest look out for these students and what contracts that they're signing, because the average 17-year-old kid who hasn't ever had to deal with a business contract does need that middle person.
I just want to clarify.
I think it makes sense. The school would have them, the student, in their best interest. Wouldn't that be a position?
I just want to clarify, because the article specifically says the school is not the agent.
No. Okay.
The school has said, here is this person that we would recommend you work with. And so there is an agency that technically the school is not part of. However, isn't there a slippery slope?
Yeah.
Are they getting
what if all of a sudden you're a star athlete and you start to have real problems with your coach? Can you start messaging about that on Instagram? And what's going to happen?
You get in the portal, you go to another school.
But here's the thing. It's possible, but I do ask the same question, which is who starts to police what you can and cannot do? And is the school, even though they're not technically your agent, do they get a say? And I think that's where it can become a little bit slippery, right?
Well, yeah, it's a new thing. It's called the general manager. A lot of schools, Duke was the first one to start this. A lot of schools are now hiring people. Listen, Nike executives are leaving their jobs to take these general manager jobs because there's so much money in it. First, to be a general
athletes.
To be general manager at the college, which is you're the liaison between the school and the students to help them navigate this new world.
If it's
And hopefully to help them navigate keeping their grades up.
I love that you think they're going to class and writing their papers. Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. No.
Mind your money. That's what we're learning. Let's take another break, everybody. And then when are we getting male birth control?
Look at the men.
There is good news. There is a brand new documentary at Hot Docs exploring the latest developments in this precise field. We're going to be speaking to the director of that documentary right after this.
This year, the Met Gala's giving us superfine style, tailored just for you. From our favorite fashion moments on the world's hottest stars.
Her looks, the hair, the face, the pose.
I mean, I obviously co-signed that choice.
It's literally a work of art.
To the riskiest looks on the steps.
Maybe that was done on purpose, just to look a little bit more avant-garde.
I didn't want to say that. I'm so glad you did.
I did.
Isn't there rumors that Anna Wintour sort of stepped in? Because it could have gone sideways.
RSVP to fashion's biggest night. Celebrate the Met Gala with us. May 6th on The Social.
Welcome back. All right, pills, IUDs, injections, rings, patches. For decades, the onus of birth control has been on the shoulders of women. But it is finally time for the male birth control to enter the market. This question is at the center of a new documentary. Take a look.
Is the holdup for a male birth control rooted in a scientific roadblock or gender bias?
That is a phenomenal question. You know, essentially, all humans can benefit from this. If you look at that on one hand, and then the incredibly slow rate and the lack of investment in developing new methods, is very hard to not come up with sexism and misogyny as a root cause of why this is not happening.
So that's a clip from a new film. It's called It's Different for Girls, and it's been premiering at this year's Hot Docs Film Festival. So here to talk about it is director Billy J.D. Porter. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so as you can hear from our audience, when women in particular hear about the male birth control, a lot of feelings come up. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's excitement, frustration, relief, enthusiasm. What did you want to tap into when it came to making this film?
Yeah, wow. Well, I mean, I think that I've experienced all of those emotions on my own journey with birth control, and I'm so grateful that birth control exists and to have access to it, but I think we can all agree that there's a degree of sacrifice that goes into it in terms of the side effects that we've become so used to shouldering the burden of. I mean, I was incredibly angry as I dug into this research, but it was also kind of this, like, you know, moment of like, God, this exists. It's in trials. It's so much further forward than I was expecting, and I think that uncovering the barriers to bringing it to market have been pretty depressing.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about that, because there are a few male contraceptive options that are being tested right now, and there's one that is closest to the finish line. So talk to us about the male contraceptive gel.
Yeah, so the method which is likely to reach the market soonest is called Nest-T gel, and it's a transdermal topical gel that men rub on their shoulders once a day, and it reduces sperm count.
Okay.
I know,
It's
we're all like,
fascinating.
you know what? We're all gonna be slapping their shoulders going, nice to see you. Good to see you, honey. Good to see you.
Actually, let's talk about that, because when we think about female birth control options, a lot of them involve, well, first of all, ingesting something or very painful IUD insertions in many cases.
Yeah.
So the idea that what they've come up with is like a rubbing of a gel seems a little bit like, I don't know, it stirs some emotions
You're
as well.
angry about it.
How, I mean, how do you make sense of this very non-invasive application for men?
I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's wildly unfair, right? I think that I saw this TikTok trend recently of women filming themselves having their IUDs inserted, and it looked like a horror film. It's harrowing. But there's numerous reasons why they settled on the transdermal gel, and a lot of it was to do with market research and the kind of absorbance of testosterone. And men were more into the idea of having a gel than taking a pill, basically.
Of course they were. Of course they were. So how successful or effective have the trials for the gel been so far?
Very successful.
Okay.
The data is embargoed right now. It's pre-publication, but so far it looks like it has a higher efficacy rate than the pill. Yeah. Really, really low drop-off rate in terms of side effects too.
Okay, so even with the success potential, data proving success, it begs the question of like how many men will actually be willing to take birth control. In your research, have you found men to be very open to this?
I think they're more willing than you'd expect. I think we've got plenty of reasons to criticize men for not stepping up to the plate, but I think that in order for there to be a paradigm shift, we kind of maybe need to give them a tiny bit more trust in that department, despite the fact we have so many reasons to distrust them. But yeah, I mean, I think especially now post-Roe, in this kind of terrifying climate that we're in, we're seeing vasectomy demand go up by over 1,000% in some red states because men can't assume that their partner will be able to terminate a pregnancy anymore.
All right, so does this gel have any side effects? Like, could it affect a man's ability to reproduce in the future?
Well, in our film, actually, we have a couple who conceive as soon as they came off the gel.
He's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Good to know.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, we actually polled our audience, and 79% of men said that they would be interested in these, or having their 70% of our audience members said that they would be interested in this, or their partners using male birth control. So, since women, though, have been carrying the burden of birth control for so long, it also means that the control has been in our hands. And I mean, I feel like I would speak for myself. I'm not sure I would just relinquish that, like pass it over very much, even if it was a trusting man who was enthusiastic. So how do you see that part playing out?
I mean, like I said, I think women have so many reasons to distrust men, period. We're living in like a time where even if you see a man put a condom on, you have to worry about if he's gonna non-consensually remove it during intercourse. We've seen so many cases of that. I don't necessarily think this is gonna be a shift where, you meet someone in the club and they're like, I'm on the gel, like everything's fine. But I think that
I can totally see that happening though,
well,
gosh.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, there is another male birth control in development, which is being called the happy hour pill, which is on demand.
Wow.
It would work half an hour after a man took it. So who knows? Maybe that is the future that we should be preparing for.
Okay, all right. So we have to finish with this question, and that's on everybody's mind. How long before male contraceptive is available on store shelves?
There are so many variables, especially under the current administration. There is a phase 3, the final trial, which is about to hopefully go through, and I will say that is going to roll out in Canada.
Okay, so we'll have it.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll stay tuned. Stay tuned. Billy, it's been great having you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
For being here.
Fantastic conversation. It was so good.
So the film is called It's Different for Girls, and you can catch it at the Hot Docs Film Festival this Friday, May the 2nd. Head to hotdocs.ca for ticket details. And after the break, author Sue Hinsenberg tells us about what it takes to be published as a first-time novelist. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
There's never a dull moment at The Social.
We're going to have one heck of a time.
With hot takes and fiery debates.
I'm too old for Leonardo DiCaprio anyway.
We dive headfirst into juicy conversations.
Where are his wild oats now?
No topic is too messy.
I'm gonna blame all of the boyfriends that I've had.
No discussion too heated.
No. That is an invasion, in my opinion.
We break it down and stir it up.
Is that a red flag?
Just real talk and fresh opinions. Unfiltered.
It's hard.
Unexpected.
This conversation has changed significantly.
And always entertaining.
Are you guys having a good time?
Watch The Social, weekdays at 2 p.m. on CTV.
Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest went from TV producer to published author, but not before weathering a whopping 198 rejections. Now her debut novel, it's making some serious noise.
The novel is called The Retirement Plan, but do not let the title fool you. It is a darkly hilarious book about murder, mayhem, and friendship. So here to tell us more is the author, Sue Hinsenbergs. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great.
Okay. We were just reminiscing because you said, Jess, off the top, you used to be a TV producer, and in fact, you were a producer at CTV's Canada AM. And a lot of people know that show.
Yeah.
You told me you produced me at the Olympics in Vancouver, and I said, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a 6-week break in your career, and it was at that time that you decided, I'm going to start writing. So what made you decide, if not now, when?
I was getting older. I was running out of time, and that was just it. I got asked at a funeral, when are you retiring? And that question just made me think, holy heck, how old do you think I am? And then it's like, you're right, I am that old. You know, and when did that happen? And I remembered I'd made a promise when I was 20. I went to see a Bruce Springsteen concert. I don't know if you're Bruce Springsteen fans, but if you are.
They are.
Well, you know what the man can do, right?
Yeah.
And he's inspiring. And he would talk about dreams, having them, and not giving up on them. And there I was, 20 years old, 2 rows from the rafters at Maple Leaf Gardens. And I was like, I promise you, Bruce, I want to write a novel. I will not give up on that dream. And then, of course, you know, I got married, I had kids, I had to make dinner, laundry, all that stuff. And I never was able to get to it. And then I realized, I'm running out of time. Like, if not now, when?
That is incredible.
Wow.
You kept your promise.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't go away, you know?
No. Bruce gets in here.
Yeah, he's
and
on
other
Broadway,
places too. But
Broadway, he writes a book, he's touring, and it's like I owed him money every time.
My God.
You know, he came
Hey,
up.
listen, Sue, did your background in television producing help you with storytelling? Like, because they are similar. So did it help you craft a narrative, essentially, a fictional one?
You know, an executive producer I worked with once said I was very populist, which is a nice way of saying you like the fluff. You know? We're not giving you the hard news, but it's about catching people's attention and keeping it. You have to do that in TV, right? People will be turning the channels. And I found I brought that to the book, too, because you just want to keep the story moving.
That's amazing.
Incredible. That's a good answer.
You know, we mentioned off the top that getting this book published was not an easy journey. And yes, you faced 198 rejections.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how you keep going, but how did you stay motivated every time they were like, no, we'll pass?
Well, you kind of have to think they're wrong. You know?
It does involve a little ego, right?
Yeah,
That's an honest answer.
Yeah, you got to get to the right person. And I changed, too. Like, I wrote 2 books, and in those first 2 books, which you will never see, I had 150 rejections on those. And I can see that now. And then I changed things up. Like, I was trying to write something, I don't know, like meaningful, or I don't know if I was trying to win the Pulitzer or whatever. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm going to write what I want to read, and I like humor, and I like fast plots and things, twisty-turny stories with friendships and that I'm just going to write that. I'm going to write what I want to read. And now this book, when I sent it out, like right away, I had the same day I was sending it out, I had people coming back to me saying, tell me more, tell me more.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It was
write
like
what you know, that old adage in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So although the retirement plan sort of sounds like a financial help book, it's definitely not. Can you tell us a little bit about the actual story without giving too much away?
Yeah, I can't tell you too much because then you wouldn't want to buy the book, right? But it's about friendships and marriages, really at the core of it. And it's about 4 couples that have been friends for 30 years. They met when their kids are little. They've kept that friendship going. And then they want to retire together, but they can't afford to because the husband's made a bad investment, lost all their money. So you can imagine how that went down at home, right? So their marriages have withered. The wives are like, they're just going through the motions. There's the blame and the shame, and they're just resigned to work till they die. And then one of the husbands dies in an accident and gets this huge insurance payout. So the surviving wives realize their husbands have the same insurance policies. Yeah.
I see where this is going.
My husband's still a little bit nervous. I can have to but it's not a how-to book. It's fiction. You know? And it's a memoir. It's not a memoir. You gotta keep that in mind.
Everyone write that down, okay?
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, they hire a hitman to kill their husbands. You know, they don't want to get their hands dirty. Like they said, one of them says that I know there's a lot of heavy lifting involving in murder, and I'm not up for that. Okay. So they hire a hitman, but they don't realize the husbands aren't quite the duds they thought they are. And they've hired the same hitman for a job of their own. So it's twisty-turny.
This sounds great.
I don't know. I'm scared to ask this next question. Where did the idea for this story come from?
Yeah. Well, you have to write what you know, right? And just so you can imagine, there's a lot of grievances in this because the wives have to be motivated to kill their husbands. So I did mind my own marriage a little bit, you know? Yeah. My husband didn't read the book for a long time. And then when he finally was reading it, like after it was sold and everything, I could hear him in the other room going, oh, come on.
Not just your husband, I understand your dog, Kramer, makes a cameo in the book. Can you tell us more?
Yeah. Well, I have a very, that's him. I know, he's a weird looking dog. People always say, what kind of dog is that? And not because they want one like him, right? But he's, I was at a point in the book, I was almost finished writing it, and I realized the villain says, I'm not a villain. And like, how do you know he's not a villain? So there's that save the cat mentality, that if you want to know a person's good, they save a cat. So I thought, well, if you want to know they're bad, they have to hurt an animal. So I need a dog, like cue the dog. So I looked beside me, and there was my scruffy, middle-aged rescue dog.
My God.
And I just put him in the book, like everything about him, that he doesn't bark, he's missing half his teeth, he spits out treats, he's always looking for the air conditioning. Like I just put all that in the book.
That is adorable. I love those videos as well. Okay, so, you know, we read that you put together the story and you were thinking of it like a movie as you wrote the book. And we understand that the movie rights for your novel have been acquired by a big studio.
Yeah. Like,
okay, so if you could, and we don't know if you have control over casting, but who would you like to see play these best friends?
Well, I put a lot of thought in that because when you're writing, right, you're thinking about them because you want to have that voice in your head. And actually, in the book, there's a little bit where the women talk about it themselves. They say, like, they talk about Ocean's 11, and the one says, "Oh, I love Sandra Bullock. I'd love her to play me in a book."
Yeah.
And the other one says, "Niecy Nash Butts. I'd want her to play me." And then they ask the other woman, "Who do you want?" And she's like, "What are you guys talking about? Like, I'll think about this when I'm negotiating our film rights from prison."
Yeah.
So, but I want Jamie Lee Curtis. You know, so.
Wow.
And then another one was Jennifer Coolidge.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
That is a stellar cast.
Well, let's, you know, fingers crossed, right? We'll see.
Okay, from your mouth to their ears.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I understand you took part in a couple of, like, writers' groups to get feedback on this book. And I read, I think, on your blog that, you know, you accepted some feedback and other feedback you didn't. How do you navigate that? How do you know what to accept and when to trust your gut? Yeah, that's kind of tough because we're the blind leading the blind. We don't really know, none of us are professionals, but we all read. And when somebody said they were confused, or 3 of your other writing partners said, I really don't know what's going on here, or you know, what's he doing? He would never do that. Then you have to listen to that. But then there's a lot of humor in the book as well. And I realized not everybody has the same sense of humor as me. And once I realized that, I just stopped ignoring them. But I love that. That's such a good note. If 3 people have the same note, there's probably something to it.
Yeah.
But with humor, subjective, you do you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Sue, this is so exciting. What a full circle moment for us here in the building, for the company as well. And congratulations on
thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks for having me.
So exciting. Thank you. Okay, everybody, it is called The Retirement Plan. It hits shelves tomorrow, but studio audience, you're going home with your copy today. So great. So good. Okay. Enjoy your spring and summer reading, if you know what I mean. We'll be back right after this. We'll be back. We'll be back. On The Social, it is the season of s'mores and sunsets. It's almost here, and we'll have easy and delicious recipes to enjoy dockside tomorrow. Also, we'll be joined by the author of Julie Chan is Dead. This is a brand new thriller about a woman who steals her deceased twin sister's identity. And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you go out and vote today, ladies and gentlemen. Have you all voted yet? Or you're going
Not yet. I haven't done it yet. I have to do it right after work. I'm going to vote.
Advance voted.
Yep.
Advance voted. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Bring your kids, of course, even if they're underage. Show them what democracy looks like. This is how we get ready for the next generation. Hey, don't forget, this show is on Crave. We're on YouTube. We've got our podcast and, of course, our social media channels as well. The conversation ends now here. Tomorrow, post-election reaction. Bye-bye.